Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program Kristi Montgomery, who is VP of Kenco Innovation Labs, and Puga Sankara, who is co-founder of Smart Gladiator. And today we're going to talk about collaborative supply chain innovation, a new model for success. Now, in supply chain logistics, there's always a new problem to solve or a new opportunity to go after, which often means that you have some form of innovation is required, whether it's a process innovation, a technology innovation, or both. And there are many different paths that companies can take to drive supply chain innovation. But today we're going to talk about one, and that's a collaborative approach between logistics service providers and technology companies. So it's great to have both Kristi and Puga here today to share their experience and approach to solving a real business problem that many supply chain logistics executives can relate to. So Kristi and Puga, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Adrian. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Now, Kristi, you've welcome back to the program. You've been here before. I think it's been about a year since you were last in the program to talk about the Internet of Things, and it's probably been a little bit longer than that since the Kenco Innovation Labs was launched. Based on your role and experience, to date, when it comes to driving supply chain innovation, what have been some of the lessons learned to date?
So we've learned a lot in the last 18 months to 2 years of having this dedicated focus on innovation here at Kenco. One of the key learnings is that in the industry, the trend is that everybody's interested in innovation. They don't necessarily know how to describe it, but they know it when they see it. And so we're finding that our customers are responding very positively to this. And a recent survey from Supply Chain Digest said that 71% of shippers are interested in their 3PLs providing innovation. So we're finding wide acceptance in the industry, and we're happy about that. Some other things we've learned are really just supply chain is a constant cost pressures business. And so finding ways to successfully innovate in a very lean startup model and a rapid development cycle, as well as being able to openly innovate with others. The concept of open innovation that Henry Chesborough introduced in the early 2000s is really a strong concept for us. And it's all around being able to collaborate with your customers, with suppliers, with folks like Puga and Smart Gladiator to bring innovation into the supply chain. There's no one expert in it. We all come together as a team to develop the solutions that are going to change the supply chain in the future.
Yeah, no, I concur with a lot of the things that you said, and certainly, I think one of the things with innovation, it is this broadly tossed word, right? That gets used a lot, particularly from analysts like myself that like to talk about innovation. But what exactly does it mean? But I think the one thing that I hear consistently, whether it's from technology companies, manufacturers, retailers, everyone that's trying to respond to all the changes that are impacting their industry, is that however you define innovation, and you can just simply define it as being able to respond quickly to changes that occur in your business environment, it's got to be done much more quickly and much more cost effectively than it's been done in the past, because gone are the days, right, where you wanted to do something, it was going to take 18 months to 2 years to do. By that point, you might be out of business by then.
Absolutely.
Now, Puga, you're new to the program, and so welcome. And then, like I like to ask whenever we have someone new on the program, I always like to get a little bit of a background in terms of how folks get involved in supply chain and logistics to begin with. So why don't you tell us briefly, about your career path, how and why did you get involved with supply chain logistics, and what's your current role and responsibilities there at Smart Gladiator?
Yes. Basically, my story is, I graduated as a mechanical engineer. So I always had this affinity for, the factory floor and all that. I worked in India for a couple of years. Even though I was a mechanical engineer, I got hired into computers because anybody that can do good math, can do computers. They just hired because of this big Y2K boom that was happening back in '97. So, and then, I'm sure you folks know the story of Manhattan Associates, right? Alan and the founders, how they started the company and grew big, and they just had gone public in '98, and then they came to India to hire the best programmers they can get, and I was one of the person that was selected and then joined, and I had a blast working for Manhattan for the first 3-4 years, completely technical role, learning all the micro details about the WMS and, being on site, doing deployments, and then got a chance to play the customer facing role, and then eventually ended up as a design lead, design architect, and then project manager, program management. So I learned everything about WMS, and Manhattan is known for very, very high speed WMS deployments at such an aggressive pace, and that's what we did. And it just once I'm on the DC floor, I just loved it. It's like back in the days, and the factory floor, and all that came back, and every minute I enjoyed it, and that's what led to this. And then I got a chance to do an MBA with Georgia Tech, and then we saw this opportunity. I mean, after 2007, with the advancements in the mobile tech, right, with the Android tablets and the iPhones, just the consumer side of things changed upside down. Whereas on the enterprise side, I still see people struggling with their old Gladiators and the RF guns. That's when we saw, hey, there's a lot of opportunity to improve this UI UX, and we just put a simple prototype together and showed it to some of the friends in the industry. They're like, wow, this is so much easier to use. So that's how we got started. So we took that and then, got our first customer, second customer, and so on. Now we have a good number of customers, and then we are working on unique projects like this as well. So, that's my story. So I just loved, being on the DC floor and saw all the action that's happening and saw this opportunity. I mean, it just, world is changing so fast on the other side, whereas on the enterprise side, there's so much opportunity to make things better. So that's what we got started. I mean, at Smart Gladiator, basically, my role is, the principal of the whole thing here in the US. I mean, deployments and sales and product roadmap and so forth. So, and we have an office, development center in India where we have some great, developers that, build capabilities so fast, and, we're able to collaborate and bring new capabilities to the industry pretty quickly.
Great, career path there. I'm an engineer myself, material science, so I started my, career on the factory floor as well in semiconductors of all places. But, it's interesting how, our career paths, for a lot of engineers ultimately end up in supply chain logistics these days. So, great to have another engineer on board here. So Puga, I'll stay with you. You talked about, mobile technologies, which is obviously the kind of the focus where you are today. And they've evolved significantly, over the past few years, certainly, over the past decade since, the Androids and the iPhones and tablets and things like that started to come to market. I mean, how would you characterize the current state of mobile enablement and supply chain management, today? I mean, what opportunities and roadblocks still exist?
I think there are a lot of opportunities. See, for example, in our personal lives, right? Our lives have changed upside down. I mean, we are constantly texting with our friends and family and coworkers. We are constantly taking pictures and sharing them with our friends, family, and coworkers. We're making videos and uploading them to YouTube, uploading them to Facebook. My daughter uploads every week one video. She writes her own song and things like that. So it's just, way of life. Way of life has changed. I think all those capabilities can be brought into supply chain, resulting in much better collaboration, much better data collection, much better, everything, right? I mean, there are, if you look at it, there are three main things that are happening, right? I mean, in the overall industry, the pace of technology, the pace of everything has accelerated. And we are living in a defining moment where it's only, it's things change, things are going to change so fast. So, for example, the retailers are shutting down because people are, buying stuff, merchandise, whatever they need online. They don't want to go to the stores anymore. And millennials are walking into the DC, and everything is becoming, smart and connected. So those are, resulting in all these changes, which we are, there is no point in, just looking at doing things in the old way, right? Uber, Airbnb, there are so many disruptions that are happening. So having, seen all that, I think we can make supply chain much more effective, much more collaborative, bringing all those capabilities into the supply chain. So there are a lot of opportunities. From a roadblocks perspective, it just, people don't change fast. Change management is a big deal in supply chain because, that's how we have done things all this while. And people don't want to take a risk. I mean, supply chain is in general, we are risk averse, right? We don't want ship something and somebody call and tell us, hey, I'm not able to scan this barcode because I have a different set of guns or a different set of scanners for myself, right? So those things are some of the roadblocks, but I think we are going to work through it because it's just the pace of change has accelerated. So we are going to be looking at people that are much more inclined to change and much more looking at innovation, much more looking at, hey, I want to take advantage of capability and so forth. So, but that mindset of, hey, risk covers is going to change quickly as we move forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's always the common thread is change management, right? And people being too risk averse, people thinking perhaps, hey, things seem to be working okay. Why do we need to change, right? And then it's not until they're fully behind the curve that they realize that maybe they should have made that change a year or two ago instead of now being behind the curve. And I certainly see that with technology today. And you see things like bring your own devices in the mobile arena becoming, that was something that was a lot of resistance, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And that's becoming now from an IT environment standpoint. I think a lot of IT organizations are embracing it, more. And that obviously plays a role with on the technology front, particularly with mobile. Well, Kristi, now let's go back to you and let's talk now about the opportunity that brought you and Puga together, starting, from the very beginning, right? So what was the business problem that you were trying to solve?
So we in the Innovation Lab focus an awful lot on customer problems. We often say that we are not solutions in search of a problem. We're looking at the problem first. So we had a customer approach us who was really struggling with a high percentage of customer complaints around shipments of their product and retail compliance fines and chargebacks around the delivery of those products, whether it was the retailer claiming that there was a shortage in how much had been shipped, or the product arrived damaged, or the labels weren't placed in the proper place, or the paperwork wasn't quite right. There's a significant amount of rules in the industry now around retail compliance. And so when you take a step back, a little bit of a macro view, and take a look at the fact that retailers are now generating up to 13%, according to a recent study, of their account revenue on chargebacks alone. 13% of their revenue, that's significant. And so it becomes a broader problem for our industry to take a look at. And this particular customer was just really struggling with the manual way that we were trying to capture proof that we did things right. And so they were using manual checklists where they were saying, was the labels on right, check, next, and then the individual was filling out a piece of paper and signing it. And oftentimes that was accompanied by a digital camera with some photos that they had taken and hopefully remembered to upload to a PC. And then when the photos hit the PC, they're in a folder that you can't understand the name of it. And the images themselves are, labeled something like IMG_3054. And so when you get to 10,000 of those, which some of our customers were having in a single week, you can imagine 3 months later when their customer approaches them and says, hey, I need you guys to prove that you shipped this shipment right so we don't have to pay this chargeback. Now I have, an incredible amount of data to try to search through with no ability to actually search by anything relevant. So we started doing some research looking in the industry. Does anything like this exist? And we did not find anything in our innovation lab. So we threw together a really quick Android prototype. Very small scale, did not have huge functionality, could not scale to the enterprise, just really to throw it out there and see what we could do with it. We piloted that at 5 sites for about 3 months, and it was wildly successful. We had people begging us to let us have the prototype, and we knew that wasn't going to be the answer. So then we kind of took a look at who can we go to try to help develop that for us, and that's how we ended up down this path with Smart Gladiator.
Great background. I think you touched upon what was going to be my next question, because I think for a lot of times, and this is particularly true for logistics service providers, right? There's a lot of times where there's the build versus buy decision, right? Which was
right.
Historically the case. And so it sounds like you looked to see if there was any solution out there that fit the bill. It sounds like you ended up kind of prototyping your own solution there, but you found that there was some shortcomings, to that. So it sounds like then there was a kind of this third path, that you ended up taking. What was the if you had to characterize kind of the factors that led you to go to this third path, I mean, what were some of the key things there?
Well, so part of it was, we've talked a little bit about this in the past. Our innovation lab is a very small group of people, and so we don't have developers on staff. And while Kenco, the broader organization, has a significant amount of IT talent, they also have a strategic roadmap and things that they have to accomplish. And so, while this was an important thing for Kenco, we felt like we couldn't, avert our eyes from the path that we were headed down from an IT perspective. So we couldn't build it internally. That led us to that decision. So then we started searching externally for who could we partner with. And we had some strong partners that we were already working with from a software perspective. And that's probably another thing I should mention. Kenco is not in the business of developing software, in the business of supply chain and logistics services. So we didn't really want to step outside that core of our service to start developing software either. And as we looked at those larger partners, what we found is what Puga sort of alluded to earlier, which it takes them a long time to change and to add something to their portfolio. And the struggle of them trying to, first we have to kind of develop a point of view and decide if we're going to work it into our priorities. And then if we're going to release it in our next version, it's going to be a year from now, and we have to test it and we have to build requirements. And I mean, we're just talking about a couple of years to get this thing to market, and that's not where we want it to be. In the meantime, we had started working with some accelerators and working with some startup companies, and came across Puga and his team, and their tagline is mobile enabling the supply chain. Well, that fit right in with what we were trying to do with this particular product. It was to mobile enable this process. And we started having those conversations with Puga and his team, and it was the right fit for us to go down that path of working with a smaller company that could be very agile and very flexible and bring this product to market much quicker for us. So. Great.
And I think again, it underscores, what we talked about earlier, like you said, the speed of innovation is critical, more than ever, today. So Puga, I mean, the end result of the collaboration between you guys and Kristi and her team was a mobile app, called LoadProof. I mean, can you describe a little bit about the development process? I mean, how did the two companies work together? How long did it go, take from kind of the concept to, having a working solution?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. By the way, the app and the cloud solution, all that is available at www.loadproof.com. Anybody can check it out. So basically, I mean, it was when we met for the first time, it was meeting of the minds. I mean, it's like, hey, this is what we are trying to do, and we were like, wow, that's exactly what we were also thinking, and we had a slightly primitive version of the same solution that we had deployed at a customer site. And when we developed our product first, and then when we showed it to one of our first prospects, I mean, they were like, okay, we have this problem of where we have to keep documentation of all this returns paperwork for our products. If you can help us digitize that with some kind of an app and take pictures and put it somewhere, that'll help us a lot. And that's where the genesis of the idea we started with. And then when we heard this from Kenco, it was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And so we took that concept and expanded it and put it in the cloud. So it's plug and play, right? It's just, hey, download the app and you start taking pictures and push it to the cloud, and it's all there. It's like, a very, very sleek, quick implementation type of solution. So, it was right. We were on board, and what's also happening is, because these pictures are becoming such an integral part of our lives, right? We can bring those pictures. I mean, we all know, right? Pictures are worth 1,000 words, and a story is worth 1,000 pictures. So if we can add pictures to some of the critical, points where, either in pallets, get handed off, or loads get handed off. So wherever there is, potential vulnerability for dispute or something like that, where we can add pictures, we can image enable the whole supply chain. Right? I mean, if we can image enable the whole supply chain and make this, let's say, for example, an Instagram for supply chain, or this image repository for supply chain, so anybody can look at, it just by the PO number or by load number, people can track their shipments and also look at their picture status of the shipment. So that made a lot of sense. So there was no debate as to whether this offers value or not. So we were right away on board, and we started right away. And I think the whole development time was like 4 months. the concept was already there, and we had about 60% of that already in place. And it's a matter of making it much more accessible in a bigger corporation, because we wanted to make sure that folks at the network level have access, folks at the site level have access, folks at the corporate level have access. So accommodating that type of hierarchical access was one of the things that we added. So it was done pretty fast, and we have a great development team in India. And we are all that is the we are all hungry for success. I mean, that's another thing about startup, and go agile process and make it really, really fast. And that's the biggest benefit of big corporations working with startups. And that's been talked about a lot in the Atlanta area where we are from. We are right in the heart of Tech Square, in the Georgia Tech campus, and that's all they talk about. I mean, it's all about there are like Home Depot has an innovation center there. Honeywell has one recently established. There are big corporations that are setting up, and we constantly do pitches in front of them as part of the Industry Connect program that we have. So it's so fast that we got it done, and we took it to production, and we have it alive. Yeah. I mean, we're glad to add value to our partner. Such a basis. Yeah.
So that's a great success story there, and particularly the time frame. Kristi, I'm curious. I mean, in terms of the developing the solution here in terms of the requirements and things like that, were your associates involved as part of that process in terms of giving them a sneak peek? I mean, obviously you had your prototype that you had built internally. I mean, how much feedback or what was the communication loop between Kenco and the associates that would be using this solution and the smart Gladiator folks in terms of getting this put together?
Yeah, absolutely. We started out with a focus group that helped us define how they thought the solution should work to be successful. And that involved a couple of 3 days after we had that focus group get together via conference call, right? Because we're geographically dispersed across the country. But being able to draw on those ideas and then have a 3 to 4 day working session to really map out those requirements and what that was going to look like. And then Smart Gladiator went away and started developing that initial product. And then we took that to, again, 5 to 6 sites that had been part of the focus group to have them test that for us before it went live on the market. So it was in a test environment, and Puga and his team released it to these sites. And then we had weekly update calls with the team to say, okay, what are you seeing? What could we do better? Are there failures of how we put it together? Did we not think about this correctly? So the Kenco associates on the floor were heavily involved in not only the upfront design, but testing it along the way and providing feedback to both of our teams to say, here's how we need to rethink this. So,
great.
Yeah.
Great. So let's going back to kind of the business problem, which you talked about, the chargebacks and all the challenges that historically were associated with that. How has this new app kind of addressed that problem? I mean, what have been some of the benefits achieved to date?
So that original customer that came to us with the problem has seen a 95% reduction in customer complaints based on their usage of LoadProof. We've had another customer who has avoided about $10,000 in fines, and keep in mind this has only been out there about 3 months. So they've already avoided about $10,000 in fines around chargebacks for their particular customer. And then we have another customer who is finding it enormously valuable in just being able to prove that their international shipments were handled properly. There's they're finding a lot of shifting as the containers are moving overseas, and just being able to show that it was loaded properly in the container on the front end has really helped their relationship with their end clients overseas. And so I could give you example after example, but enormous success so far. And we are onboarding new customers every week, it seems like. So really wild success here.
Great. Yeah, those are some significant benefits there, particularly in the relatively short time frame that you've been using it. Now, Kristi, maybe Puga, you can add your thoughts as well. I mean, just for clarification here, I mean, is this LoadProof app available to other companies? Is it a proprietary solution that's just available to Kenco and its customers? In other words, I mean, how does this partnership work? Particularly moving forward.
So Adrian, saw this as a much broader supply chain problem, and our goal with our innovation lab is not to solely focus on, our own internal needs and just our customer base. And to be honest with you, we have a lot of customers who have other providers in their network. And to be able to only offer them the solution in our one facility that we run for them didn't actually benefit them overall. And so, that's one of the great things that the Smart Gladiator partnership brought to this, is that it's not a proprietary solution. So I'll let Puga speak a little bit to the availability of it, but no, it's not proprietary.
Okay, great, Puga.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's all about the spirit of the partnership. Part of the spirit of the partnership is also bringing innovation to the supply chain marketplace, right? So I mean, it's not proprietary. I mean, as a matter of fact, we are onboarding other customers that's outside of the Kenco umbrella as well. And people are seeing benefits, and people are interpreting it in different ways. Hey, we have this problem. Hey, maybe we can take temperature gauges to make sure, at the time of handoff, we got the product at the right temperature and things like that. So there are different, and it's such a generic solution. I mean, it can be applied anywhere. For example, tomorrow, if we want to, as part of our product, right, we do deploy the consumer mobile devices in a warehouse environment that are ruggedized. And if someone wants to, hey, during the time of picking or during the time of packing, I want to see the picture of the product, right? We can incorporate. Load proof could be a perfect repository for all those images, and we can pull those images into our picking function or any other function that are performed in the warehouse and show those pictures. So it's a very generic tool, which part of the reason why we're able to do it much quickly was that it could be used for anything where we have to image enable something, right? So.
Right.
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, and anybody outside of, somebody thinks of some other use case outside of this, just documenting loads. We are completely open to anywhere else that we can put this technology to use. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think you touched upon something that I think is also part of when we think about innovation. And in particular, when we think about increasing the velocity of innovation, is sometimes you can get so caught up trying to put so many bells and whistles and make it the most powerful thing in the universe, when in actuality if you take a step back you realize that the solution, and I think this is where Apple had always been successful. Right now, if you don't need an extra button there, don't put the button there, right? And I think it's the same thing in a lot of cases today, where particularly from a software standpoint or anything else, really, is that sometimes this perhaps need to try to perfect something or make it more than it needs to be, ends up overcomplicating it, and then by default, extending the amount of time and effort that it takes to actually put this out. So I think that's. It sounds like that was something that both of you kind of focused on. That there was a very, very specific need, and you weren't trying to kind of create a whole huge enterprise application here. It was a very specific need, and you well defined it, and that was part of the reason why you're able to get it out so quickly.
Yeah.
So, Puga, I mean, we're running out of time here, so I'll start with you. Just as a way to wrap up. I mean, based on the initial success that you've had to date, I mean, what would you say are the key ingredients to success in creating a collaborative innovation partnership?
I think the spirit of the partnership. I mean, from a Kenco perspective, they were clearly on board and very mindful and knowledgeable about the methodology to follow while working with a startup, right? I mean, they were like, hey, we got to get this done fast, and startups, that's what you guys do. It wasn't like, we are not educating each other as to, hey, this is how you would work with a startup, or this is how you would work with an enterprise, a big company, right? That was so easy. And it was the, the transparency with which we had our conversations, and we are right here, we just, hey, we'll drive down to Chattanooga and meet face to face, because it just makes things so much easier. It just meeting of the minds in terms of, this makes a lot of sense from a supply chain perspective. And I think the fit was very well formed. I think that's the reason for the success. I'm sure Kristi has a lot more to say. Well, yeah.
Kristi, yeah, your thoughts.
So I absolutely agree with Puga that shared vision is really important, and beyond that shared vision, what we really appreciated about Puga and his team is they had a vision even beyond what we thought of for the product. They could see how we could take that to an even broader, not necessarily scope of the product, but scope of the ability to use it. So we're finding uses in the real estate. So warehouses are being leased, and when you get to the end of that lease, there's significant leasehold improvements at times. And we're finding some customers are using it to capture, this is what the building looked like when I moved into it. So now I don't have to pay all these leasehold. I mean, just, it's amazing the different things, as Puga said, that people are coming up with to use that. And part of that, is a tribute to Puga and his team being able to think outside the box of what we could do with this application. I think in addition to that shared vision, is being open to a new business model. This partnership required us to both create a new services agreement between us and how we were going to work together and what that looked like. And so we both had an openness to thinking about things differently than we kind of would have originally gone to market with a strategy of just our own product. And being really synchronized in our efforts around marketing and how we're going to go to market with this load proof tool has been wildly successful as well. But I think to Puga's point too, just being willing to work with a startup and understand their limitations and being able to work within that framework has made us successful in working with a startup team like Smart Gladiator.
Yeah, no, great insights there. And, I mean, what I heard was obviously, alignment in, vision and strategy in terms of where each one, each party wanted to go to. Obviously, great and ongoing communication, between, both parties. And then, we talked at the beginning of the conversation, about change management and thinking differently. And it sounds like, Kristi, to your point there, you kind of got together and came up with a new business model, a way of forming a partnership, between yourself, a logistics service provider, and a technology company in terms of, how can we work in a way that's a win-win, for both parties as well as the customers and the broader market in general. So, great points by all. So thank you again. As I always say at the end of all our programs, you always manage to scratch the surface on these topics. But I appreciate you both making the time to be with us today to kind of share your, story and experience in terms of, how a collaborative partnership can work in terms of driving supply chain innovation. So Kristi, Puga, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And I want to thank those of you that joined us today. If you are watching this episode on demand, either at the Talking Logistics website or the Kenco website, and you've got a question for Kristi or Puga, you can post your question there, and I'm sure that they will be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you all for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.